ready, Tina. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Tina Bender, and I am going to be presenting Learning to be Depressed by Mr. C. And being humans, we would like to think that we're in control of our lives. Our actions are determined by a belief that we will get a certain result. When the perception of control is no longer present, we often feel hopeless. What would happen if one day you woke up and had lost control of your life? Would you feel hopeless? Would you give up? These are symptoms of depression. According to the Mayo Clinic, depression is a medical illness that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. Depression can cause physical symptoms too. It's also called major depression and major depression disorder, as well as clinical depression. It affects how you feel, think, and behave. Depression can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. Depression can make you feel as though life isn't worth living. The symptoms of depression are sadness, feelings of guilt and hopelessness, change in weight, loss of interest in all types of activities, difficulty sleeping or oversleeping, severe energy loss, difficulty concentrating, poor memory, fatigue, anxiety, agitation, irritability, suicide thoughts, and feeling that life is just not worth living. A behavioral psychologist by the name of Martin Seligman proposed that our perception of power and control was learned from our experience. Seligman felt that when a person lacks control of certain things in their life, that they usually give up and stop trying altogether. Even when there is hope for certain situations, they still feel hopeless and depressed. Seligman referred to the cause of depression as learned helplessness. He developed a theory where he used dogs as subjects, which is now a classic. Seligman had learned in the early experience that when dogs were exposed to an electrical shock, that they could not control that later. Even when an escape was present, they didn't even attempt to escape. This was his method. In Seligman's experience, he used 24 dogs, each weighed between 25 and 29 pounds. They were 15 to 19 inches each, and there were 3 groups of 8 dogs in each group. The first group was the escape group. They were restrained in a harness, but they were able to move. When the shocks were presented, they could escape by pressing the panels on either side of their head. In the no escape group, each dog was paired with the dogs from the first group. And though the shocks were delivered to each pair at the same time, the dogs from the no escape group had no control over the shock. The dogs from the escape group still had to be the one to press the panel. Though both groups were shocked at the same time, only the escape group had the control to stop the shock. The dogs were given 64 shots in 90-second intervals. It didn't take long for them to learn to press the panel and terminate the shock for themselves and the no escape group. The control group had no shots at this level. And this was a picture of the first shock. Okay, 24 hours later, the dogs were placed in a box similar to the previous one. The only difference being there were lights put on each side of the box. When the lights were turned off for about 10 seconds, an electric current would pass through the bottom of the floor. If the dog jumped the barrier within those 10 seconds, they escaped the shock completely. If they didn't jump the barrier, the shock continued until they either jumped the barrier or 60 seconds of shock had passed, at which time the shock was discontinued. Each dog was given 10 trials in the shuttle box. Seligman and Meyer measured learning as follows. How much time it took on average from the time the light came on until the subjects jumped the barrier. The percentage of subjects from each group that failed to learn they could escape the shock. The dogs in the no escape group received 10 additional trials in the shuttle box 10 days later to determine the lasting effect of the treatment. That's the second shuttle box with the lights. And the results. In 9 out of 10 trials, the subjects that failed to learn to escape the shocks was the no escape group. Approximately 80% of these subjects failed to learn where in the escape group, all learned to escape. In the no escape group, 6 failed entirely to learn to escape. These 6 were tested again 7 days later, and 5 out of 6 failed to escape. The no escape group had learned to be helpless, even when escape was possible. In the escape group, the time it took for the dogs to press the lever quickly decreased after 64 shots. In the no escape group, the paddle pressing completely stopped after 30 tries. Silliman and Morrow concluded that the escape group subjects learned in the harness phase that their behavior was related to the termination of the shock. Therefore, they were motivated to escape the shock. For the no escape group, the termination of the shock had nothing to do with their behavior. They had no expectation that the shock would terminate. Therefore, they had no incentive to escape. They had learned to be helpless. Occasionally, a dog from the no escape group made a successful escape in the shuttle box. However, on the next trial, it reverted back to helplessness. In their findings, Silliman and Meyer reported the results of a subsequent experience that offered some additional interesting findings. In the second study, dogs were first placed in the harness escape condition where the panel would terminate the shock. They were then switched to the no escape harness condition before receiving 10 trials in the shuttle box. These subjects continued to press the panel throughout all the trials in the no escape harness and did not give up as quickly as they did in the first study. They all successfully learned to escape and avoid shock in the shuttle box. This proved that once the animals had learned that their behavior could be effective, they were more motivated to change their fate. In subsequent research, Silliman later applied his research to humans, where he found that they too developed learned helplessness that was found in animals. In both situations, they were passively observed, giving up and just sitting there, lack of aggression, slowness to learn that a certain behavior is successful, weight loss, social withdrawal. Both the helpless dog and the depressed human had learned from past experiences that their actions were useless. Research has shown that depression that develops in humans can have some serious consequences. Elderly people that have been put in nursing homes and had to relinquish control of their daily activities have poorer health and a greater chance of dying sooner. Other research has proven that uncontrollable, stressful activities can play a role in serious conditions as cancer. A prominent health psychologist implied that being a good patient means having to be passive and give up all expectations of control. This actually may create a control of learned helplessness in the patients, whereby they fail to exert control later when control is both possible and desirable for continued recovery.
Okay. Anybody has any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions?
Could you go back to slide 4? I think that, what is it, perception control is learned through experience. Next one. Yeah, no, the one before. If I look at the experiment, Seligman obviously likens helplessness or equals
Helplessness.
to depression or behavior caused by depression.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means doesn't that imply that he also feels that depression is learned?
That's the whole point.
Learning to be depressed is a name of a learned helplessness.
I'm just having an issue with on one hand, it says that control, or our perception of control is a learned experience. So that means we have some sort of role model that shows us whether and how we can control our life. Okay, and on the other hand, he says that when a person lacks control of life, then they give up and stop trying altogether. But that would also imply that there is a role model for that behavior as well. I mean, you either have
No, yourself.
It's
Yourself. You are the role model. You have learned
because of previous experience,
It's so.
that nothing you can do will solve the problem. That's what what happened with the dogs. So if you lose control,
Right.
go ahead, Tina. Sorry.
It's sort of like, just take for instance in a relationship. Okay, if you just say you battered or whatever, and you feel, you just feel helpless. You feel like it's nothing you can do. You can't get out of it. So it's like a learned helplessness. You lose control. So when you lose control, you get depressed. That's like with anything. You lose your job, you get depressed. If you feel after you exert all the other, trying to find a job or whatever, and you don't do it, then you get depressed.
So it's beyond that. If you do quote unquote everything right, say you lose your job and you're looking for a job, and you write a great resume, you get into a course that will get you better prepared. You send 100 applications. You go on the internet. You do all these things, and you still don't get a job. Then you might experience learned helplessness. Let me give you kind of a dramatic example of a story I heard. This happened about 100 years ago. It was this child that had really stern parents, and the father in particular. I mean, it would be classified as abuse nowadays. It wasn't, because we're talking 100 years ago. But the child, every day at 5:30, the child had to go and pick a switch to be spanked, from the garden. Okay. And because every day a child misbehaves, so it serves a punishment. And then if this child had not misbehaved on that day, then he would get twice as many switches. Because we're sure he had done something wrong, and he didn't, which made it even worse. So you can see how this child would grow to feel helpless. So damn if you do, damn if you don't. That could be another title for this paper. The whole point is that yes, you can learn depression. Now, we should not overextend. There are different types of depression. So this is one type. This is one way in which people and animals obviously can get depressed. There are other types of depression. There's chemical depression, in which chemical imbalances in your brain actually cause you to feel depressed. We're not saying that every case of depression is a result of this mechanism. But it's interesting to see something that, once again, I mean, people say, and I'm not a behaviorist by any means, but people say, well, behaviorists had it all wrong. No, they had a lot of things right. They didn't have a complete picture. But we're gonna start studying behaviorism next week. But they could show, like the same thing with the doves, the superstitious doves, that a lot of cases of behavior that you would never expect for them to be a result of conditioning, actually they can be the result of certain types of conditioning. They can be learned behaviors. And even though we do have some innate responses that go beyond what the behaviorists actually claimed, there's plenty that can be explained by the mechanisms that they defended.
So they just felt it was helpless because they knew the shock was coming no matter what.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah, that if you do, that if you don't. I mean, the matter. Sorry, go ahead.
So
The
that's why they
second
didn't
group,
move or try to get out.
Yeah, because see, that second group, they was paired with the first group, and no matter what they did anyway, it wasn't going to relieve the shock.
It was the other group of dogs, the ones that had the control, right?
Control. They had no control anyway. So even when they could get out, they didn't, because they had.
So obviously, though, that second set of dogs didn't really learn anything from that first set.
Learned helplessness.
Yeah, they learned that they had no control,
They
therefore
had
they
no
became
control.
depressed. When they had the chance to escape, they didn't do it.
They didn't do it.
Apply these to, I mean, you gave a very good example, the case of a battered woman. This dinner is cold. Okay, the next day, she warms it up, thinking that might make the monster better. This is too hot. Better thing. So that woman, and then people ask, well, why didn't she leave him before he killed her or something like that? You get this all the time, okay? When you have cases like that, cases of abuse. Same thing with, what is this case of this young girl that she's been on the news recently because she was kidnapped as a girl and she was kept.
Was it smart?
Pardon?
Smart? Yeah,
It might have been smart. There are a couple of cases, and it's the same thing. She just published her autobiography. And there was a point in which a cop saw something suspicious, and he actually asked her, "Are you okay?" It was smart girl, right? Are you okay? Do you need help? Are you in danger? Do you want me to take you away? And she said, "No, I'm fine. He's my dad." Why would she do that?
this is a possible explanation. Okay. Because time after time she had tried to escape, nothing came to it, and then slowly you learn that you cannot do anything.
Well, I've heard an example of that, like, if you put a pot of water on the stove and put a frog in it, and the water slowly heats up, the frog will try to escape.
Oh, that's different though.
But because, okay, but if you drop a frog in hot water, he'll try to jump everywhere.
If you take my sensational perception class, you will see how that is different.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with learned helplessness, because you know that the frog has learned that nothing that you can do will help.
Okay.
It's that even
It's just
humans,
conditioned.
we measure,
No.
not conditioning.
No.
It has to do with the way in which you perceive temperature. You perceive changes in temperature between the different. You don't perceive the temperature of objects. You perceive the difference between your body temperature and an external object. That's what you perceive. But it's a completely different mechanism.
Because this person was comparing it to being battered, so you don't think
No.
that's, no.
No, it is not the same mechanism. I mean,
Okay.
physiologically, we can talk about it later, but physiologically
I was
has
just
not.
curious.
No, this is a much better example. The one that Tim explained with the dogs is a much better example.
Okay.
But no, the frog or even the lobster, same thing with the lobster, has nothing to do. It has to do with the way in which animals perceive heat or temperature. But we can talk about it later. Well done, Tina. Very well done. Okay, so now